This week on Dig Me Out.
Und die Geschichten haben mich dann immer mehr verwirrt. Meine Musik ist negativ.
With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, we're back, and it is another patron-selected episode.
Let's go.
We are with a gentleman who has suggested such previous albums as Maximum Sincere by Big Heavy Stuff, On Second Thought by Sandpit, Open Up and Croon by Glide, The Glorious Couch Life by Pollen. Let's bring on or introduce Josh Page with all those picks. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Number 5 we're going for. So, yes, I'm very well, thank you. I've just finished traveling around Australia with my family for 7 months. So we had to put the podcast back by a few months. So thanks for accommodating me. Yeah.
That's no problem. I hope your travels were exciting and trouble-free.
They were pretty exciting. 18,000 kilometres. I don't know how to put that in miles, but maybe 12,500 miles and all the way around. So really good fun.
And nobody got attacked by a kangaroo.
No attacks by kangaroos,
Thank God.
except today on a bike and many years ago to my mum.
Will you please share with the audience the album that you have selected for this episode?
Yes, it's been on the list for a while. Not From There, a Brisbane-based band, 1998 album called Sand on Seven, their first album of 2 albums that they recorded. And it definitely deserves a listen and a mention. So that's why I've put it up today.
Jay, had you ever heard of Not From There?
You know, I hadn't heard the name. The album cover looks very familiar, but I mean, it looks like a vintage NASA or Russian space program photo. So I could have just seen the photo somewhere else, but the name did not ring a bell. It's a very nondescript name for me. How about you?
Same. That's definitely Russian because I think the one at the bottom, you can see part of a C.
The C, yeah.
Yeah. So the CCCP, whatever the number, which I never understood how that translated into Russian. Why 3 C's and a P?
So Communist Party, I know, is in there.
Oh, is that what it is? So it's not a literal translation.
No.
Translation of USSR.
No.
Got it. Okay. Well, like you, I had never heard of this band. Do you know much about their history, Josh? Is there anything you can share with us about the backstory?
I know the lead singer and songwriter. I think it's Carl. I might have it wrong. Carl. He's Karl Heinz. He's from Austria. Hence why there's a few songs sung in German, which I think are awesome. And they met in London. The bass player and the drummer are Aussies, and he met them in London, and then they all came back to Australia eventually and settled in Brisbane and recorded and made music as Not From There, I think, because they were sort of not from any fixed address.
You were close. It's Heinz Riegler.
Karl Heinz, yeah.
Yeah, so he probably, he might have gone by.
Probably just Heinz, and I just made it up.
But so it was him, Simon Lambert on drums, and Anthony Hills on bass. And like you said, they formed in 1991 in London, England. They did score I don't know if we called it a hit single, but it did get in the Triple J's Hot 100 with, I can't pronounce it's Sich, Öffnen. Yeah, it's definitely German. I don't know. And as you said, they released 2 records. Sand on Seven came out in 1998 on Infectious Mushroom. Not infectious/mushroom, not an infectious mushroom. And Latvian Lovers came out in September of 2000. They broke up fairly short after that second album came out. Like by 2001, they were done. So this was a fairly contained amount of time that they were together. Hines has worked on a lot of different music over time. He's worked in like ambient bands and experimental noise music. He was, I guess it says in 2008, he was shortlisted for the Grant McLennan Memorial Fellowship, a Queensland government initiative created to honor the late Go-Betweens founder. Interesting. So it must be some sort of like an artistic foundation. And
I think he did some work with like classical composer musicians as well. So yeah, very varied background.
And this album was a winner of the ARIA Award for Best Adult Alternative Album in 1999. They were nominated for Breakthrough Artist Album, Breakthrough Artist Single, and their producer was nominated for Producer of the Year. Excuse me. That producer is Magoo. Is his name? Mr. Magoo. Do you know who that is?
I like it.
Anybody?
No, he does have a real name, but obviously his recording name is Magoo, and he's done Regurgitator, probably is the most famous of the stuff, I think.
I was going to say, it kind of sounded familiar to me.
He produced Unit by Regurgitator, their biggest album. So, yes, very well known in Australia.
And they did have a follow-up single to the one that was actually charted. Juanita's Cocktail Party was released January 1999, but it failed to achieve the level of success of the first single. So, again, this band was not around for a long time, so there's not a lot of history to share. As you mentioned, they were named because they were all immigrants to where they were, so they named it not from there. Yeah. And they did do like a cassette earlier because they formed in the early 90s, but they didn't get around to actually putting out the record until 98. So they had some like demo recordings and stuff before that. They got them noticed. They had an EP out in 91 and 3 more after that before they started putting out records. The folks at Patreon,
like Hines got deported. Sorry, Hines got deported, and then the got deported. So I think it took to settle in Australia and actually then get back to recording.
Did they overstay their work visas? That might have been the problem.
Probably.
Well, some folks at Patreon, most of whom had not heard this before, had some comments. So Willie Dillon said, "This album is so awesome. I have a hard time describing it, but it's like cool alt rock with quirky sounds and production incorporated into it. The percussion on the corkscrew kind of reminds me of the band Swell. There are definitely post-rock elements here as well." Rich, that's one of our patrons, said he didn't like the vocals, but he's obviously got a screw loose or two. Wow, shots fired. I could probably do without What Is Better Now. Good stuff overall. And Gavin said, "This is such a unique sound with parts of grunge, some almost noise rock, and then also a slower side, not to mention singing in German at times. Not that there seemed to appear, not from there, seemed to appear fully formed, as in an instant, had a surprising amount of success for the sound, then promptly vanished again. I'm so glad this was suggested. It's a great album and a perfect DMO suggestion. Also, it saved me a pick. I was definitely going to bring this. So good job. You stole one from Gavin."
Yeah, well, you know me. I like picking the obscure ones that no one's heard of.
Yes. He asked if it was on the USB, and if people don't know, if you've maybe missed this in previous episodes, when we first put out the podcast and Gavin discovered us back in like 2011, 2012, he actually mailed us a USB stick of Australian bands that we had never heard of, because obviously we were completely ignorant of the hundreds of bands that existed then, and we have been working off of that USB stick for quite some time. I think we've gotten through maybe like 80% of it. At least the bands, not all the, I mean, he put a lot of albums on there, but at least for all the bands that he listed, we've gotten through quite a bit of them. So this was one of those bands, and I'm glad we're finally getting to it, because it's another one we get to knock off the USB list. So, Jay, let's get into talking about this record. Not from their album Sandown 7, released in 1998. What works for you on this record?
Well, we touched on it in the comments. It's a very innovative sound. It's sounds like a band, but also there's and I mean like a bass, a guitar, drummer, and a singer. Like you can hear the four elements, but there's something about the way that they construct and play that almost sounds, I don't know, digital or a little synthetic, which is really interesting. A lot of it is constructed around bass riffs, which I'm always a fan of. A lot of fuzz used on those bass riffs, which they they also employ, and it almost becomes an instrument itself. You hear it on the first track, Hurricane Charlie, where there's so much fuzz on the bass that they let the feedback from the effect actually be part of the riff, which I think is a really cool idea.
I noticed him from the sound of his motorized scooter. He seemed in an ecstatic tango, talking about his newfound love interest. One, his height and deep brown eyes. He just got back from the hills. They were looking at the city from up there. She smells like apples, he said, sitting there holding hands and all looking at the city from up there. He had a vision. I'm gonna leave this place. I'm gonna call myself Juanita. I'm gonna change my voice.
So you've got the bass driving a lot of these songs with this really gritty, fuzzy tone. Carries a lot of weight with it. It's pretty melodic. If you strip down the bass lines, the bass is usually doing something interesting, melodic. It also can groove a bit, and then the guitars come in, and they're often more angular or bringing more tension, I think, to the music. They're definitely important to the overall sound, but I wouldn't say these are like guitar driven songs. Juanita's Cocktail Party, it really shows off the interplay, like to get an idea of like how these bass and guitar parts work together to create these songs. To me, I get it kind of plays out where you get, especially in that song, this kind of punk urgency and energy to things, but then it'll take these shifts that get very angular in post rock, and usually that's coming through on the guitar. The guitar will just play something really kind of off kilter and odd, that kind of flips what seems like you're going to be like, oh, this is just like a punky indie rock song, and then all of a sudden this weird thing happens and it flips and it gets strange and angular for a moment, and then it shifts back to something different. So I really like that interplay between those instruments and how they're working together at times, but also often in conflict. And I think the other big takeaway for the sound and how this is all constructed is, the vocals are spoken for the most part, but they're this kind of like cooled, laid back, almost poetic delivery. And the closest I could come to would be like, some of it sounds a little bit like Jarvis Cocker. Like if you just listen to the vocal, you're like, oh, I could hear that being a pulp vocal track. But then other stuff kind of sounds like Girls Against Boys to me. It's a little bit more aggressive. So it's somewhere like in that space. There's some stuff too where it gets a bit more dreamy, which I liked a lot. So it gets a little less angular, and a good example is Neurons, where things get a little quieter and the sound is like more open, it's less percussive, and the vocal in that is a little more melodic at times. It reminded me a bit of like a take on Pink Floyd in a weird way, like this kind of trippy, heady kind of turn that I thought worked really well. I mean, it's not there all the time, but I think it's definitely a facet of the band that I appreciated. So it wasn't always like aggressive and angular and kind of fuzzy and loud. There are some moments where it gets quieter that I think work really well too, and they get a little more dreamy, which I thought was kind of refreshing and a nice twist, so that you get a little bit of variety on the record. definitely a unique sound. I guess Girls Against Boys is probably the closest band I can think of to describe what they sound like, but even that is a little off because they're not really using keyboards here, from what I can tell. It really just sounds like bass and guitar. So a lot of this stuff is just coming through like effects on those instruments and effects on the overall production that gives you this interesting, like almost technical synthetic sound. So that's what worked for me. What about you, Tim?
Well, I'm right there with you. Listening to this album, it definitely feels like it is a combination of a lot of different and unique influences sort of squished together into one album. Like you said, there's the first track could almost be like a Jesus lizard type of thing with that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then Juanita's Cocktail Party, the parts of that reminded me of like Pavement. That sort of slackerish vibe of, especially that like first guitar riff sounds like something that would have been a Pavement riff. And throughout the record, you get a completely different sound. There's some stuff that sounds like very slowcore, like you mentioned with Neurons. And then What Is Better Now sounds like a noise track off of like a Skinny Puppy album or something. So it is like very diverse, and yet somehow it all works together on a record because every song has its own weirdness, and that's, I think, what connects them. The use of feedback throughout this record, you're dead on with the Girls Against Boys sound. It's got that nasty aggressiveness that is still melodic, that they were good at. There was a lot of bands, I feel like, towards the end of the 90s, sort of like were playing with more noise and feedback and stuff in the underground. As far as like what this band is doing, it's interesting to me that anything on this record made it to radio, because this does not sound like a radio record in any way, shape, or form. Like, this sounds like the kind of record that your friend goes, dude, have you checked out this album? It's crazy. And you listen to it and go, oh, wow, there's so much interesting stuff happening on here. But it doesn't sound like something you would discover listening to a pop radio station in 98, which is just, it's wild to me that this was ever on the radio. But I can see why, like, people would be into this, because it's almost like they're challenging the listener. Like, you're not going to get 10 or 11 songs of the same vibe. Like, you're going to get a lot of weirdness. You're going to get German. You're going to get feedback. Things are not going to be comfortable. You know, like Orb of Discomfort, I don't even know how to describe that song. I mean, is it like Devo or something? Like, it's so weird. And that happens, you know, throughout the record with various tracks where you're just like, Okay, I think Bark Market came up for me every once in a while because Bark Market used a lot of distortion as a part of their sound. We did the one song, or we did the one album, which I'm forgetting the name of, but I remember that being pretty aggressive and edgy in terms of like how much distortion it was using. Bark Market never got on the radio here. I mean,
No,
so
no,
it's crazy to me that this would be a radio band.
yeah,
But I liked listening to, I like that feedback noise. I mean, I think it's pretty well crafted. I think if they had, if it was more like the first Jesus and Mary Chain album, which is just constant feedback, constant like overdriven and a lot of that like high end squeal, like that's what drives me crazy.
yeah,
Whereas this, when you do the feedback and you sort of like craft it a little bit better, sort of like the way that the Smashing Pumpkins did on Mayonnaise. If you think about that song, there's that feedback that happens on that song, and it actually is a part of the song, which is what they're doing on these songs. They're making the feedback part of the melody or part of the guitar riff or something. That to me is what works really well. So those are some of the things. Josh, you suggested this record. What works for you on this album?
Dude, I can't say I have agreed with you guys more in any review we've done, even though we've all loved these albums, thankfully, that I picked. But yeah, even when you just said Mayonnaise, I was like, that's my favorite song off Siamese Dream. So I just think that I've discovered that I do like bands through you guys with melodic bass lines. I think that's what catches me a lot of the time, the bass line. I think it's just fantastic. The bass player. I remember Jay saying that about Glide. I remember you saying it about Sandpit. So I think I like rock music with those melodic bass lines particularly. But yeah, I just think that the sonic elements of this album are amazing. Like you've got a feedback guitar solo that fits and sounds good. And I'm not a massive noise rock fan, but I don't find it abrasive or challenging at all. I just find it fits the song perfectly. But I love how there's a song, like you said, like the Orb of Discomfort. And just before that, there's this beautiful song called Abgedroschen that's quiet and atmospheric. And then the Orb of Discomfort comes on and you're like, holy crap, but it still works. And then Sich Öffnen was the song sung in German that got number 100 in the Hottest 100. And it's definitely, I think, the most melodic song of all of them, but it's still a very interesting song. I think it means to open up or to open yourself in German. But yeah, it just all works for me. I love his spoken word lyric in lots of the songs. It fits with them. And yeah, it's nearly like this, as you say, the feedback or the aesthetic of each song sort of is what makes it flow. But it's like this cohesive album, even though you get these songs that are so different from one another. So, and I still feel like for me, I always like melodic rock music, and I still have enough of that in this album to make it but it makes it really interesting. So yeah,
It's interesting that you say that Sich often translates to open, because musically that's probably the most, like, I would say open song in terms of it has like more of a splashy cymbal sound. It has more of a jangly guitar sound. It's probably the
most
loosest
they're ever going to get.
Yeah, it's pretty loose compared to a lot of the, especially because you have a lot of slow songs that are very, I don't want to say tight, but they're controlled.
Yes,
You know, they're keeping everything
restrained.
restrained, exactly. Whereas, you know, like a song like The Corkscrew, I think that's probably gets closer to that, like God or Girls Against Boys sound, minus the gravelly voice of the lead singer of Girls Against Boys, who I'm blanking on his name. But Jay, what doesn't work for you on this record?
It's so I like some of the quiet stuff, like I said, but it does the mix of some of the other quiet tracks and then some of the experimental stuff starts to lose my attention. I think the record starts very strong with the most, traditional kind of song formats and songwriting up until really after Sich Öffnen. So track 7 through the rest, you start to get much more experimental, noisy, droney. It starts to lose me. There's things in there I like. I like how What Is Better Now starts. The first section of that song, I like the big riff. There's a really cool guitar thing in there that's using like a drill or something. It's a really cool sound and hook. But then the middle section gets real kind of, starts to break the song down and gets real drony and experimental, and it doesn't really come back and resolve for me. I like the sounds of, is it Abgedroschen?
Reaktiviert und umgekünstelt. Hier kommt mein Klischee. Gesprochen aus dem Mund der Verzweiflung. Gesprochen aus dem Mund des Zynikers. Gesprochen aus dem Mund der Verachtung. Für euch alle. Are you sleeping?
But it's a little, it's 4 minutes. It's a little quiet. It doesn't have kind of the melodic hook that Neurons has. So there's just some material here that starts to maybe go a little too far in the post-rock experimental direction, loose song structure, drop tempos, do some things that make it challenging for me to really stay engaged. And then when I put the record back on again, I hit repeat, and I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this sound, and I really like this sound. And it sort of loses me as the record goes. And I think as they it feels like they get a little indulgent as the record goes. And I don't know if that's a sequencing thing or, to happen on purpose or what, but it just feels like as the record starts, they front load it with like, okay, here are more accessible songs. And then as you get to the second half, it's like, okay, now we're really going to forget all that and just explore the space and see what happens. And I get a little lost there. So what about you, Tim? Anything not work?
No, I completely agree. I think the first 6 songs are the strongest tracks on the record, and if it was an album, it would be the second half that is, it's more experimental. It gets much more abrasive with What Is Better Now, and then like towards the back half of 3 words repeated when he's like screaming and there's tons of noise. And not that those are like separated out from the album, they're interesting songs, but I think it's like closing. I would have preferred to close on something quiet rather than getting screamed at, because it's like, that's not how I want to end the record. I would like to end the record on a sort of a chill note, I think, because there's been a lot of abrasiveness. It's just that there's, like you said, like the guitar riffs aren't as interesting. Like I mentioned, Juanita's Cocktail Party having like a pavement feel, and that's part of that is from that guitar riff that's in there. That's like it's just like a chord progression, but it's pretty slinky. It's like going up and down the neck of the guitar, and you don't really get that in the back half of the record. It's much more just like noise and sounds, and less in terms of actual like structure, which I think was, I get it, like they're making a lot of experimental choices, but they were able to do that in the first half, but like keep it contained, I guess, a little bit better, or keep it more structured so that the feedback or the experimentalness was more integrated into the song as opposed to it being the song. And that's where it kind of lost me a little bit. Josh, is there anything that doesn't work for you on this album?
I definitely agree with you guys that I think the strongest tracks are those first 6. In saying that, I like the last 5 as well, like probably you guys do as well. But even a song like track 5N, I agree, like something like that could end the album as well, just as a little bit of a come down from all the sonic assault that you've had. And I love that, but I do love that he experiments with sound and it's probably not surprising that he did go on to do lots of experimental sort of electronic and maybe even orchestral type stuff after, not from there. But it's tough because I like all the songs 7 through 11, but I agree it flows. The first 6 songs are just awesome and flow really nicely from one to the other, but I still love the album as a whole. But I could see how a song like N, track 5, could maybe finish the album on more of a chilled, restrained note, which could be cool. I still love that screaming on that 3 words repeated. But yeah, but I definitely agree that it's a front-loaded album as far as, if you want to call it accessibility, But yeah. Still holds up as an album for me, but strong songs at the front, I agree.
And would be the closer for me. The way that it sort of builds, it's like a perfect closer.
Yeah, there's tension. It doesn't really get released, but it's like you're waiting for something and it never comes, but it's still beautiful. Sort of
right.
Thing, so.
As a nice chimey guitar part, it's not overly distorted, but it's not clean. Yeah, that would have been I think if you rearrange this record and maybe like, I don't know, moved some things around so the back half isn't the more experimental end, that maybe it would have worked. Like, what would happen if you put the Orb of Discomfort, which is it's not even 2 minutes, but what if that was like the 4th song and it was just like a little interlude between tracks, as opposed to being the song before the end of the album?
Yeah.
Or what happens if, well, What Is Better Now should be half the length of that song. It was 6 minutes.
It was released as a single before Sich Öffnen. What Is Better Now?
That's okay.
Now, it's like I'm the same. I love the first 2.5 minutes, but then when it trips out into its electronic explorations and, as Jason nearly deconstructs the song, I wish they'd put it back together and then finish with another minute of the start of the song. But maybe Hines was like, Buggy, you, I could do that, but I'm not going to.
I mean, so much is happening in that song. It's just like constantly shifting gears. And there'll be parts where I'm like, ooh, that's a really cool part. And then it'll be gone. And then it'll go back to it.
Military type drums that go, I love that. But then you only get about 2 of those. And then you're like, oh, that come back.
There's a part that sounds like Jackal, where he's like going up and down just sliding his finger up and down the.
Some think that sounds like a chainsaw.
Sounds like a chainsaw. I did not expect to bring Jackal into this discussion, but that's what it reminded me of. Like you're trying to start a power tool or something. Yeah. Maybe it's more for unlawful carnal knowledge, pound cake.
To me, it sounded like a drill. Like you put a drill up, like Eddie Van Halen did, put a drill up to the pickup. But I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, there's some weird sounds on there.
There's definitely some weird. So I don't know. We should there should be a list of all power tools used in songs. I've got to imagine that somebody's, because who was it? So you got the power drill, you've got the chainsaw. I know that people have used like cement, or not cement. What was it that Brendan Canty used? He used like a big like bell, like not a bell, like a Liberty Bell style bell for like some of the stuff that he's played. That's not really a tool, but it's definitely not normal.
Your cigarette guy plays the cello bow on his guitar all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Scott Walker punched a side of meat for percussion on one of his. He went into like they have those big hanging sides of beef, and he just punched it, and that was the percussion. For one of
might have liked Rocky Balboa, the movie.
Yeah, we need more meat punching percussion. In terms of, I don't even know the history in terms of if this got released in the U.S. I need to look that up probably, but this does not seem like a band. I know it got on the radio there. It's not getting on the radio here. Maybe this is going to be like a college radio artist here in the United States. But it would have to get here, and I don't know that this small label was going to, release this in the U.S.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this.
I'm still staggered that it won the ARIA for best alternative, because when I've been telling friends that I'm doing this album, they're like, I've never heard of them, and it won the ARIA for best alternative release, and so no one's.
According to, it got a CD release in the U.S. on Cool Arrow Records, which I don't recognize. Oh, they put out some Faith No More. Must be this must be reissues, but it's not a big label. A lot of compilations, and yeah, this is one of their first releases. This is their second release on the label. So the label basically started with a compilation, and then this was their first album according to discography or Discogs. So, and none of the other bands that I'm seeing on here, except for some reissues of Faith No More, are remotely recognizable. Sleep Bomb, Flatbush, yeah, sorry. So I'm guessing they probably sent out some promos to college radio, and that was probably it. I can't imagine they sent this stuff to like the average radio station in the US, because that's just wild. It is interesting though that there was no UK release, even though this band formed in London. They only released it in Australia, US, and Japan. So they missed out. Their original
being okay in Japan. I reckon people in Japan would probably like it actually.
This does seem like it would do well. It had yeah, that actually it has an official promo for Japan. So they did try to promote this in Japan. I wonder, I'd be curious to know how that did there. Let's talk about overall ratings for this record. We're the album, and we'll share the poll results from Patreon in just a moment.
Worried. Clancy, my son, thought it was going to be another worthy album, but after our discussion, I'm a bit worried.
Uh-oh.
Dad was showing me all the bands, and I heard it, and then I thought, oh, they'll like this one.
He said, that's noisy and really loud. They'll love it.
We're unpredictable.
Yeah.
You
never know.
It's how the mood strikes us. Jay, how does the mood strike you? Is this a worthy album, a better EP, or a decent single?
Oh man, I'm right on the edge. Here. I would take the first 6 minus track 5N. I think I'm going to go with an EP, because I think if I take the first...
We need to knock you down a peg.
You've been on a streak here, Josh. We got to bring you back to reality. If I take the first 6 minus N and replace it with 3 words repeated, which I think I like that as an album ender. I think that's a really strong EP. I get who the band is. I get the sound. I skip the sort of experimental stuff that doesn't connect, despite missing some moments in there. I do like, if I felt confident that I would really grow to understand that side of the band a lot more and enjoy that, I would be more apt to say album, but I'm not sure that I will. I feel like I kind of, not that this band you don't appreciate the more you listen to, but you sort of get it fairly quickly. Like, oh, this is what the sound is, and right, I either like it or I don't like it. It's not that nuanced. So I'm gonna go with an EP. I feel like that's the strongest material and what I'd most likely, return to. How about you, Tim?
I'm probably in the same spot as you. I take the first 6. I do like Abgedroschen, whatever track 9 is. And then 3 words repeated, I think I would just move it to a different area and of the record, maybe closer to the mid part of the record, and then move N to I think that's the one we're going to do for the closer. But I'd be at that's 8 songs, I think. So I'm right on the edge of an EP and an album. But I think it's more likely going to be an EP with this. So it's a very strong EP. That's what I'm going with. Josh?
Strong EP. No, still worthy album. And I like his experiments with sound and things like that. I agree that it could be maybe resequenced, but I think that element of the band is what makes them really interesting too. So that's why I would be happy. I like What Is Better Now, but I agree that it could be 3 minutes, not 6 minutes. And I like Abgedroschen. I like 3 words repeated. I even like the Orb of Discomfort because it's just so crazy. And I just love that sound.
That's a perfect hidden track. Like stick that on at the end.
Yeah, at the end of N after a 2-minute, break of sound.
Yes.
Yeah, so no, I could definitely take pretty much everything, maybe except track 7, but I still like it. So I'd be happy with a 10-track album. So worthy album.
Well, our Patreon community agrees with you, Josh. They went 75% worthy album, no better EP, and 25% decent single. So somebody did not enjoy this, which is totally fine.
Yes.
It's definitely going to be an album that people will either, I think, enjoy, and they'll get a strong EP out of it, or they're going to be like, what the hell? Like, I was trying to describe this to my wife earlier, and I was like, well, it's got like feedback, and then there's these really slow songs, and there's some German. It's just like, what are you listening to?
My wife likes the slow N and Abgedroschen, and she doesn't mind Sich Öffnen, but then when it gets into, say, the Orb of Discomfort, she's just like, turn that off, please.
I think what is better now should have been split into 2 tracks, and then like part 1 and part 2 throughout the record. Like that to me would have worked a little bit better. But Mr. Magoo was nominated for an award for producing this record. So who am I to disagree with Magoo?
Still sounds great. Sonically,
it does actually. Yeah, it sounds really. You can, for as much feedback and weirdness and noise, you could hear everything that's happening. It's not muddy.
Yeah, for the amount of distortion too going on here, because you got distortion in the instruments, and then you've also got it on the mix, which, to your point, Tim, like it does a great job of like distortion and the fuzz and all that on the mix is part of the song. It's like, and it manages to do it in a way that's not abrasive.
Yeah.
Which this type of music sometimes, like you mentioned that, Tim, like you get in some frequencies that are just not pleasant to listen to a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I turn really noisy noise rock off. I can't listen to it. That's like with this I can. So
Right. Well, like I said, like that first Jesus and Mary Chain album, like I appreciate what they're doing. I just can't listen to it. I need like the albums after that, because it's just so much distortion.
Probably affecting your tinnitus.
I probably have tinnitus just from listening to that album. Well, Josh, thank you, and thank you to your offspring for bringing this to us and bringing this to the Patreon community, which very much enjoyed this record, and hopefully more, because of you, because of Gavin, because of Jason, because of Darren, because of all these people, we've gotten to hear all these really cool Australian bands over the years that we've never experienced. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Got 2 or 3 more obscure ones up my sleeve. I might not see the decade out, but I've got 2 or 3 more.
Well, we hope you do. I hope nothing happens. I mean, the way things are going, we could we could be into the Mad Max scenario real soon before we realize it. And then, then we're
not sure who's
fighting over petrol.
Being on a bike here in Australia, or you guys over there with your current situation too.
Yeah, yeah. Our current situation. It makes it sound like our laundry isn't done. Our current situation is the laundry's not done. Not that we have global editing.
Dirty, lots of dirty.
Yes. I want to remind everybody who is listening or maybe watching the video. Although if you're watching the video, you probably know this, but I want to remind you that you can go to digmeoutpodcast.com and dig into our archive of over 800 episodes, which I'm going to guess between 30 and 40% are Australian, somewhere in there. That's probably at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We probably should can we do a pie chart of bands by country? Is that possible? We probably don't have that information all aggregated in our back end algorithm. I'm just throwing words out. But I'm betting 30 to 40% of the bands that we've covered are from Australia. And if you want to listen to them, go to the archive. We also have history of the band posts and new release roundups. If you would like to become a paid subscriber, you get such things as bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.